18th, 2024. And I ask that you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk Beck, would you please call roll?
Present.
Here. Here.
Present.
Present. Again, I'd like to introduce a group of students that are here. And I will introduce, it's a student club for in the high school, middle school. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Deary. Deary, would you stand up and maybe introduce the two guys, Jack and Mac, or Jack and Zach?
Delegates that are here want to stand up. And then Jack and Matt, do you want them over here to speak or stand where they're at?
They could just come to the lectern and say a couple words. They wanted to explain why they're here and what they do. Push the button to make it green and give us your names. How's that?
Yeah, sure. My name is Jack Darden. My name is Matt Jarman.
Okay.
Petoskey delegation.
Petoskey delegation. And we're the two delegation leaders for Petoskey Youth in Government for high school. So Youth in Government is a statewide program run by the YMCA. It is kind of a mock government program where we go down to the state capitol in Lansing and sit in the Senate and House chambers. Sometimes it's different for the different programs. It has a wide variety of program groups. First, there's LEDGE, which is where you go to the state Senate and House chambers and you are a mock state Senate member or House representative. There's National Issues Forum, which you can probably speak a little bit more about.
Yeah, the National Issues Forum, it's where you can discuss topics and issues on nationwide issues, not just on the state level. And it's a different rule set and you can really just talk about anything and it's mostly the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of other programs like MJP, which is like a mock judicial program. There is lobbyists, there's press corps. It's a great program. You get to talk to a couple real state senators and just kind of get the good government experience.
All right. Well, why don't we just have everybody give us your name and your grade level? Really loud.
Charlotte Vance, Petoskey delegation, 7th grade. Loretta McLaughlin, Petoskey delegation, 7th grade. Sophia Case, Petoskey delegation, 7th grade.
Donna Corcoran, Petoskey delegation, 8th grade.
Okay.
Richard Peters, Petoskey delegation, 11th grade.
Okay.
Helen Donahoe, Petoskey delegation, 7th grade.
John Gill, Petoskey delegation, 7th grade.
Carter Brown, Petoskey delegation, 6th grade.
And I have two more back here that just came in. Your name and your grade.
Vincent Sprague, 7th grade. Aiden McMurray, 7th grade.
Okay. I'm sure that Ms. Demore will get with you sometime in the future and talk to you about YAC, Youth Advisory Council, that we are also operate through this with the schools. So during the next couple of years, you'll get more information and more possible involvement. I think it's great that you started as middle schoolers. I know there was, when I came to visit you guys, there were many more than just you guys, or quite a few high school kids. So I look forward and congratulations on being involved in such a great program. And thank you for your leadership as well. So thank you. See what we do. Well, items. Next is public hearing. That's receipt of comments concerning a proposed special assessment rule that would spread costs of downtown area programs and services during 2025 as requested by the Downtown Management Board. I turn it over to City Manager Horn.
It's public hearings.
So at this point, regarding the assessment, there's nothing and nobody online. So now I will move to the consent agenda. And that's the acceptance of the November 7th, 2024 regular session city council meeting minutes, as well as acknowledge the receipt of certain administrative transitions that actions that have occurred since November 7th, 2024. It also includes the October 2024 revenue and expenditures report to council. Council, do you have questions, comments, or a possible motion? If no questions or comments, Mr. Moore.
I just have one proposed correction on page 10. This is relative to our 2025 meeting schedule. It looks like June 16th was inadvertently left in as one of our meeting dates when it was removed for purposes of ward conventions. So I would propose that be omitted.
Okay. So do you make an emotion then on that?
I'd be happy to make a motion.
Thank you.
So moved that the consent agenda be moved forward with that one correction.
I'll be happy to second the motion there.
Okay, any other discussion, council? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Moore,
Aye.
Wagner,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Now, this is your opportunity to speak to council. If there's something that you wish to talk about that's on the agenda, I ask that you, if you can, wait until that item comes up so that you can be a participant in the discussion on it. But if somebody has a comment or something they'd like to speak to council, you'll step up, push the button to make it green, give us your full name, full address, okay? Full name, full address, and address council, not the people behind you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna remember my name and address this time.
Okay.
Andrea Coronado,
Yeah.
5397 Howard Road, Petoskey, Michigan, 49770. I can admit, like, I wrote a scorched earth script and then I ran through ChatGPT because I don't remember that you guys are all friends. So I want to remain calm. I'm just here once again to voice my strong support for the Winter Sports Park Pavilion project. Last meeting, I shared how this initiative could truly transform our community. And I left feeling maybe my words didn't quite resonate with you all. Since then, I've had meaningful conversations with most of you, and I'd like to address some of the concerns that I've heard surface. Derek mentioned a lack of public interest, citing a supportive email and 6 opposed. I'm just hoping you also consider the overwhelming support and financial support this project already has secured over the past 3 years. And this is what that backing looks like. Petoskey Rotary, 277,080 plus members. The Scholl Family Fund, 25,000. DNR Trust, 298,000. Great Lakes Sport Commission, 150,000. Bear Creek Township, 25,000. The Harbor Springs, Petoskey Harbor Springs Community Foundation, $82,000 from over 120 donors. And the Fry Foundation, $300,000 pending final design. That's more than $1.1 million committed with no cost to the city. These organizations and individuals are deeply invested financially and emotionally in making this project a reality. These funds are earmarked exclusively for a Winter Sports Park Pavilion. Further delays or indecision jeopardize the support. The reality is that you are at a real risk of losing these contributions if you fail to act. I've heard a lot about the importance of listening to residents, and I encourage you to reach out to the more than 200 donors who are engaged with this project and the 6 organizations who have stepped up to support it. Derek also raised concerns about the pavilion's impact on the rink's ice. There seems to be ample evidence that protecting the ice from sunlight extends its usability. And beyond that, the pavilion would support year-round recreational events, broadening our city's offerings. Lindsay, you suggested a millage, and I would vote for that in a heartbeat, 100%. But I don't want to overlook that we have the funds now with the ARPA funds without burdening residents with additional taxes. As costs have risen, the staff has done a tremendous job working tirelessly to close those funding gaps. And Mayor, thank you for your service. When you spoke, you acknowledged the potential loss of funding. It's really disheartening that a well-supported, donor-funded initiative could falter over this last indecision. Tina, I really do appreciate our candid conversations. You put up with me longer than most people would. And as you talk about a lack of transparency, I just want to make sure that it doesn't seem really transparent to me to put the ARPA money into park safety or public safety where it's not needed, to then create a surplus elsewhere that no longer has to follow those ARPA money rules. It just doesn't seem appropriate to me. What I'm worried about most is the domino effect of donor after donor withdrawing due to inaction. And that's a real tragedy, a possibility of losing over $1 million in external funding if this last ARPA funding is not contributed to the park, Winter Sports Park Fund. If the project fails, Rotary will obviously support another community need, but this project deserves to move forward. And our hope is that our funding stays in the city, and I want to make this a win-win for our whole community. So thank you.
I'd like to make one correction if I could.
Of course.
At the last meeting when you were here, it was explained by the city manager to council that in order to preserve the ARPA money and not lose it to the state by the end of the year, we had to make a commitment. And I think he explained that we were paying salaries in public safety with the understanding that that would free up the same amount of money for next year to be utilized by council rather than losing that money to the state. And the state okayed putting the money into paying wages for public safety with the understanding it's holding place in general fund. Okay. So that money, okay, just letting you know that money is not going to, it is paying for public safety wages with the intent that it frees up that same amount of money during the budget coming up. Okay. I just had to make that correction.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, sir.
Hi. I'm Joe Blocky, 810 Harbor Watch Drive in beautiful Petoskey, Michigan. You all know what that is. Ever since I moved here in June 1976, 48 years ago, I've loved the Winter Sports Park. It was pretty crappy shape when we moved here, but I was part of the committee that helped raise the money and co-chair for the nice building that's down there. And I used to spend a lot of time down there with my kids. And at that time, there used to be this cute little girl down there that used to hang out down there all the time. Oh, there she is. She was there all the time. I don't think she was ever home. She spent all the time in the sports park. But Rotary and your city team worked for about 3 years now to make that pavilion a reality. And the reasons are, number one, as you know, to have a gigantic year-round space, especially for the 50-some kids that spend all the summer camp there, because childcare is very, very important. That's an important part of it. But for a lot of other uses, and also the roof will eliminate the rain, snow, and direct sunlight, which negatively affect the making and the maintaining of ice. So I just hereby ask each of you, members of the council, to make the needed financial commitment from the city. We'll go ahead with that. You, the city council, committed to this project, endorsed it, and based on that, Rotary went ahead and worked. 100-some people donated to the project, and I'm sure there's going to be some more money coming from the community and other sources too. But we need your help to get it to complete it. So I'd appreciate the continued commitment to get the job done. Thank you. You still get to play down there, Lindsay. I went with 3 generations of Blockies last winter. We went sledding, so.
What else was to speak to council at this point, sir?
Green buttons on. All right. My name is Stephen Zell. I own the business Buds of Petoskey at 1111 Charlebois Avenue. And I'm here. First of all, I want to commend the board. John, you've been more than accommodating, always return calls. Tina, during the midst of a family tragedy, took the time to make a call to me, and I appreciate that. Derek, I met you, took a break during your workday to meet with me, and again, I'm very appreciative. Brian, we haven't met yet and haven't talked yet. I hope to do that in the future. Lindsay's been above and beyond, and so kudos to the whole board. You guys are awesome. And what I'm here to do is to ask the city council to do legislatively what 2 voter initiatives have failed to do. So some reason or other, it doesn't seem to make it to the ballot. I'm a big believer. I believe the people, the voters, should have a voice in this issue, but it keeps getting stymied and not going to the ballot for reasons. I guess those reasons are debatable, but I have a ton of data and information I would love to share with the board. I know this is not the appropriate time during public comment. I would like to ask you guys to, if you could schedule a special meeting or something and have the principals involved in the meeting. And that's what I would love to do, and sit down and share what I know and what I've got with you. And if you guys want to send me packing, then I would understand that. But this has been unable to get to the ballot for a variety of reasons. And I've got a ton invested in this financially, emotionally. And all I've ever wanted to do is have a business here in Petoskey, my favorite city in northern Michigan. And so that's what I just want to put it out here for you guys to ponder, and hopefully we can schedule something. I'd love to have a special meeting and be able to sit down and share my thoughts, what I've learned during this process, which has been quite substantial.
Mr. Blocky, did you take it outside? There was talking.
I couldn't hear what you said, I just asked.
I understand, but we were quiet for you both. We're going to be quiet for this gentleman as well. Please continue.
Well, that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to say. Like I said, it's a lot of stuff, a lot of data here that I want to share, but this isn't the time. But hopefully you guys would extend me the courtesy, given the investment I've made into this community, to at least have a meeting where we can sit down and talk about the details of the situation. Because based off what I read on social media and what I've heard from people, the truth is not out there. And I think it needs to be made public, or at least shared among the board council members here. So that's pretty much all I want to say. It's just, hopefully you'll give me that consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to council at this time? There being none, I will now move on to the city manager's update. I'm going to turn over to the city manager, Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few brief reminders. This week is our last week of fall leaf pickup. We're doing one more sweep around the city. We'll be starting that tomorrow in all wards, and hopefully conclude by the end of the week. So make sure any remaining leaves that you desire to be off your lawn is out to the curb here in the next day or so, as we make one final sweep around the city. Also wanted to remind folks, Parks and Rec is doing a parents' night out. This will be at the Winter Sports Park to give parents an opportunity to have a date night, maybe start some Christmas shopping, can drop the kids off. Between 5 and 8 is the hours on Friday, the 23rd. There'll be games, movies, pizza, crafts. This will be staffed by our staff that does our kids camp staff. So this was designed for kids ages 6 to 12. I checked just before I walked up here. We have 28 registered. We can take up to 40, so we still have room to accept more folks that are interested in this opportunity. A few public meetings this week. Tomorrow night, the Downtown Management Board will meet here in this room at 6 o'clock. They'll be reviewing the 2017 downtown sidewalk furnishings design guidelines. And then they'll also be reviewing the dining deck ordinance and licensing that will be coming back to City Council shortly. Wednesday of this week, Planning Commission meets here at City Hall. They'll be considering a special condition sign request for Picado. That's at 402 East Lake. They'll be approving their 2025 meeting schedule, and they'll be having a public hearing on zoning amendment to 725 Harbor Watch Drive. And then they'll also be reviewing the short-term rental zoning ordinance that is essentially putting back the grandfathering language back again, and then setting a public hearing for that to move that ordinance forward. I just want to celebrate Jason Fate. For those that you know, Jason is our PE, our engineer. He's our construction supervisor. I've talked with Jason on a number of occasions, interviewed him. He will be stepping into the role of our Public Works Director, replacing Mike Robbins, who will be retiring at the end of the year after 35 years-ish of service. Certainly, we're not going to replace Mike and his years of leadership and experience, but Jason is an internal promotion, has a good feel for Public Works Department, and I believe will do a great job in continuing that leadership going forward. So congrats to Jason. We'll be attempting to backfill his position in the coming days, and we'll be advertising for that. So that's my updates for this evening. Any questions for me?
Council, any questions? Ms. Walker?
Sure, I have some comments. Thank you, Shane, for that great update. I always want to remind Petoskey residents that the fall is a great time to start your own backyard composting bin. So if you're not necessarily interested in putting your leaves out to the curb, exploring the joys of backyard composting, really fall is a really good time because we have all those beautiful leaves, a carbon source necessary for layering your compost bin with your food scraps. And then I am delighted to hear that we were able to hire internally and that Jason has been given the position of the Director of Public Works. It's, like you said, very huge shoes or moccasins to fill here, the role here as our DPW Director, but I have complete confidence that Mike Robbins has really built a culture of trust and like an each one teach one model that helps bringing your staff up to a level to potentially lead the department. So I'm very excited about that. And then for this Friday's event, I definitely want to make sure that I get some event recycling set up and a zero waste station for the parents' night out at the Winter Sports Park. As the Winter Sports Park is a big topic of discussion these days, I just want to make sure that we're leading with green standards involved in really sharing with our youth the possibilities that we know how to do this right in the city of Petoskey and in Edmond County. So I'm really excited about those possibilities and those parents will have an opportunity to shop, and those kids will be well taken care of. Thanks.
Anyone else wish to speak to the council? Great. Thank you, City Manager Horn, for the update. Next is the appointments, and it's the appointments for the Downtown Management Board. First, I'll bring them each individually. First one is Joe Keating. Joe is family owner of the yes. And he's also was a resident, has just recently moved out of town. But he does serve on the Downtown Management Board, and having served with him on it brings ideas, comments, I think that are very creative. And I think he's a real plus to the board. So I bring to you his name for consideration to support me on the board. Mr. Wagner.
I'd love the motion to approve Joe Keating.
Support.
I have a motion from Mr. Wagner and a second from Mr. Moore. Any other comments? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Wagner.
Yes.
Moore.
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Congratulations, Joe, wherever you are. I'll be seeing him tomorrow night at the Downtown Management Board with our city manager, our city DMB director, Ms. Tweeden, who is right here. Next, I'll bring forward Stephen Mullen. He owns a business downtown. Has served only for roughly less than a year. We filled a vacancy. I find that he's comes up with some great ideas. He's supportive of the Downtown Management Board in the downtown. He owns Craig Ryan Clothing on Howard. So I bring you his name and ask that you consider. If you have questions, let me know. Mr. Shields.
Make a motion to approve Stephen Mullen.
I'll second the motion, Mayor.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Shields, a second from Ms. Walker. Any other discussion? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Shields.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Moore.
Aye.
Wagner.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Now we go to old business. And that's the adoption of the proposed resolution that would confirm the proposed special assessment role. I'll turn it over to City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think this is 404, our fourth discussion about setting the special assessment role for downtown based on the Downtown Management Board's recommended formula with their 3% increase. We have sent out the notices. We have received, as of right now, we have received 0 feedback, calls, emails on the proposed increase to downtown business owners for this assessment. So I would open up for any questions, feedback.
There are no questions. I ask that you have a possible motion in a second.
I do have one question there. Thank you.
Please.
So as part of the packet, we were given an example of an invoice for special assessments. And in the invoice, it kind of covers what the cost would be per square footage for the first floor, second floor, third floor, basement, and then it says vacant space. So I just want to be really clear in that vacant space doesn't mean a building that's vacant. Vacant space actually refers to vacant land. As part of the assessment. So I just wanted to be clear, like the assessment cost of 0.0649 per square foot is for vacant land, not vacant or unoccupied space.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Do I have a possible motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Moore and a
I'll make a second one.
second from Ms. Walker. Any other discussion, council? Public, do you wish to express anything to council at this time on that motion? No. I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Aye.
Walker.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Amy, make sure to let our DMB members know. Sure they'll be happy. Next is new business. And this may be a little lengthy, but I don't think it's too bad. It's a presentation of the city's recommended 2025 annual budget and adoption of a resolution that would schedule a December 2nd public hearing to receive comments concerning the proposed budget and the property tax millage rates that have been recommended for the fiscal year 2025. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Horn for his presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start into the budget, I do want to backtrack a little bit in my report, city manager report, and just really affirm, if you will. I always try to look internal for promotion opportunities. I've been blessed throughout my career to be given consideration for promotional opportunities. So I always like to look internal first and really hope that we have a fit. I think this really speaks to, in this case, Mike's leadership in grooming someone who he thought potentially could replace him at some point in his career when he was ready to retire. So again, I want to just give kudos to Mike and his leadership for pouring into Jason, for giving him opportunities and exposing him to meetings, to different things throughout his progression, to really put himself out there and be qualified for this opportunity internally. So I'm grateful that we're able to do that. We're able to provide that opportunity. And again, grateful to Mike for really pouring himself into Jason and really building him up to allow him to take on this responsibility. Okay, so diving into the budget, and before we start that, really kudos to Audrey, our finance director, who's with us this evening. Audrey spent many late nights, Saturday mornings, kind of working through a lot of data, compiling a lot of data, all of our department heads the same way. I think you'll find this budget to be responsive and responsible. And hopefully as we go through this, it checks off your priorities. It aligns with our master plan. And we're able to achieve and address some of these issues that we have in front of us that are priorities of this body. So And I, again, appreciate City Council's time in reviewing this. This is a substantial document. There's a lot of data here, a lot of information. So really appreciative of the time that you've spent in review and the time that we'll spend tonight going through questions and getting responses back. But as you all know, our action plan priorities are listed here: parks and public spaces, infrastructure, economic development, downtown development, sustainability, affordable workforce housing, and community engagement. So these are the priorities that we as staff view and look at and make sure that whether it's a capital improvement project, a larger project that maybe is out there a little bit from a cost standpoint and from a budgeting standpoint, we want to make sure that what we're putting in front of you checks the boxes of these 7 items. And as well, our master plan, our Livable Petoskey master plan document. So just a general budget overview. I need to put my glasses on because I can't see very well. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So I'm getting used to this is a kind of a sidebar, but I've got progressive lenses now, which is very difficult for me to get used to. So I apologize for the on and off of my glasses. So the 24 operating budget is just over 35 million. This is the budget that we're operating under now. This is operating only, excludes capital. So the 2025 operating budget is just under 38 million. So you may ask, that seems like a lot of a pretty significant bump. So what we have this year, which is a little unusual, is we have a significant amount of grant administration and grant dollars that we're facilitating. So anytime we get grant dollars, we have to book that as revenue, but we also have a booking or an allocation on the expenditure side. So it expands our budget, and in this case, we have a number of projects. The Maple Block Flats Brownfield grant, that was $1 million grant to facilitate environmental work that's going on. And actually, we're beyond that now. You're actually starting to see some actual work going on that site. But that's able to do that based on the amount of cleanup dollars that we received an Eagle grant for. So that's $1 million. We're anticipating, we've spent some of that in 24. We anticipate about $780,000 in additional grant money that we'll be expending in 25. So we have to show that obviously as revenue. The Wheelway Slope Restoration Design Engineering, you may recall we received $1 million grant for that project. So that project is ongoing. We expect we're almost probably halfway through that grant. So we'll have about $410,000 in additional grant monies that we'll expend in 25. We also received a $500,000 CHILL grant. These are homeowner improvement funds that are available for income eligible families in the city of Petoskey. That's $500,000. That'll all be expended in 25. And we hope not to send one penny back to Lansing. That is certainly my goal. I've got about 12 applications that I'm working through right now to facilitate that funding. And as you know, we have 2 rounds of ARPA that we have matched county allocation of ARPA money with our ARPA money. So 2 projects. Round 1 is the master plan at Winter Sports Park and associated improvements that will result from that master plan. So that's $100,000 in total, as well as round 2 funding for ARPA, that is City Hall security and AV improvements to this room here and our community room as well. And then our ARPA allocation of $504,000 that remains from our original $604,000 will be yet to be determined by City Council as we go through the master planning process at the Winter Sports Park. Park Avenue project also received a grant, $150,000 grant. That project will be ready to go out to bid, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. And that's a April of 25 project start. And then we'll wrap that project up very quickly by June 15th. We'll finish that project before all of our visitors arrive for the summer. And then we have a housing readiness grant. This is for zoning reform work to help us to kind of reform some of our zoning work. That's a $50,000 grant. So a lot of work has been done by staff to submit grant opportunities and to administer grant opportunities. So that's why you see the jump in the two budgets. It's really to facilitate a number of these larger grants. So just an overview of staffing. This budget anticipates a 3% cost of living allowance for our full-time staff. As we have every year, it seems like we have a fluctuation in health insurance costs. We go underneath we essentially offer 3 healthcare plans. One is an HMO. We have 2 POS, point of service plans, that employees can choose which plan really aligns with their family situation. So the city pays the premium up to the state cap amount, which is listed there. Unfortunately, and I haven't really figured this out and don't have a really good answer for this. Typically, the Treasury Department increases the hard caps close to the rate of inflation. This year, that did not happen. So they only increased the hard cap amount by 0.2%, which our increases from a health provider went up significantly more than that. So you can see what the caps are, the hard caps for a single person, an individual +1, and then a family coverage. So again, we pay the premiums up to the state cap amount, and then the employee is responsible for the premium above the amount of that. We've been a Blue Cross Blue Shield member. How long now, Audrey? For
The last
6 years. They gave us a 17% average. This is across the 3 plans increase for 2025. We have our provider, our administrator shopped around and found Priority Health as an option with a 13% increase from what we paid in 24, and also came forward with a hold of the rates for 26 at 9.9%. So it certainly appeared that Blue Cross is a significant increase this year, and they gave us a advance notice that next year may even be more than that based on our claim history. So we made a difficult choice. We've enjoyed Blue Cross and their coverage, but we've made the leap to Priority Health, and we'll be making that transition in 2025 at those rates. And we also moving on from Delta Dental to MetLife Dental as well. So we'll move forward accordingly based on those rates. Talk a little bit about the MERS unfunded liability. As you know, that we have invested, and this is really kudos to City Council, who've really have made the tough decisions over the course of several years to really invest in our unfunded liabilities. Many communities across the state have not been as diligent, in my opinion, with managing our unfunded liabilities from a pension standpoint. So over the course of the past 7 years, we've invested $6.2 million above what our obligations are to that benefit to really try to cut that number down and make it a more reasonable number for us to attain. So we've gone from about 73% funded back in 2015 to 92% funded currently in 2025. So this budget anticipates an additional $400,000 payment for our unfunded accrued liabilities to really make sure that we're keeping that percent where it's at and going above and beyond what our commitment is for this benefit. Contributions will come from the general fund and also the enterprise funds, general street fund, to make up this $400,000. The 24 budget millage rate was 13.1523 mils. This is being rolled back to 12.8089 mils. Again, this is the Headley Amendment. As your taxable value for the year exceeds the rate of inflation, there's a rollback to the rate of inflation, or 5%. So this is, again, some of the challenges that we get to deal with as a local utility or a local government in Michigan, dealing with the Headley Amendment and all about those impacts that causes. Our service delivery demands still remain, and so that expectation continues. We will not have any utility rate increases for 25, so that's water, sewer, and electric. We are going through rate studies currently, and will likely be ready for something by mid-year of 25, but at this point, no utility rate increases for 25. And then this chart just kind of gives you an overview of our tax rates, both from the general fund. We have a cleanup or right-of-way. This is solid waste, rubbish, leaves, brush, recycling program. And our right-of-way, this is public improvements within the street, the sidewalks. There's a millage to support that. And then the library has a dedicated millage that was successfully renewed this year within Bear Creek Township and help me, Val. 4 townships. Okay. Okay. Now that's the city, right? Okay. But also it was renewed around the 4 townships as well. So city council will formally establish these rates in June, but the recommendation is to stay at the current rates in 24. So you can see what that generates from a taxing standpoint. We do have 3 tax increment financing districts: the Waterfront, Petoskey Point, and the Great Lakes Center for the Arts. We have an active 425 agreement for Bay Harbor that we pay back to Resort Township. They are 2.5 mils for that 425 agreement with Bay Harbor. So 2.5, an equivalent to 2.5 mils, or about $853,000 is what's budgeted for in 2025. So general fund highlights for the 25 budget. You can kind of see where we started this process this time last year in 24. We anticipated about a $17,500 addition to fund balance. It appears, based on the current today's numbers, you can see that revenue is up almost 1.3 million. Is the estimate, and then expenditures are also up, and those are, again, grant funds that are cycling into our community. But we're anticipating a designation of fund balance on the positive side of $278,300 to this point, is what it's estimated to look like at the end of 24. 25, you can see what we're projecting from a revenue standpoint and then expenditure standpoint. And then the way this budget looks, it is a $552,000 designation to fund balance as the budget proceeds. So we think it's, again, a responsible and good budget based on how we're trying to manage, our expenses. A few of the things to highlight in 25, I think economic development grant administration, that's 1.2 million. That is, again, that is where we're kind of storing the grants that are coming in. So that's why that number is higher than it normally typically would be. Public safety is up from last year, about 151,000. They had some new, this is really due to personnel costs. We went through a collective bargaining agreement with both groups in public safety that will result in a little bit of higher expenditure in that budget. They also have some new state required CPE, that's continuing professional education requirements, that adds money to the budget, as well as there are some opportunities to qualify for grants to supplement those additional professional education requirements, but that remains to be seen if we'll get those funds. So we have added money to make sure that we're in compliance with the new state CPE requirements. Building and grounds is up as well. And that's really due to some capital improvement projects that we'll talk about here in a second. And then parks and special facilities are up 366,300, and that's really boils down to the Park Avenue project in Pennsylvania Park and that area, as that project hopefully gets underway and wraps up in 25. Our state share revenue really remains flat. This is another significant source of revenue that we get outside of property taxes. So this really remains flat from 24. So no really significant jump there. Property tax revenues, you can kind of see graphically how things are going. In the orange is all of the taxing. In orange, and then the general fund taxes are in blue. So we had just about 3.8 million in 2017. In general fund, where we'll be up to 4.6 million in this year's and 25's budget. So you can see that progression. And then total, we got almost 6.3 in 2017. And then we'll be at 7.9 in 2025. So you can see how that has progressed over the last 8+ years. Just another way to show revenues in the general fund. You can kind of see how this breaks down. Property tax, obviously, this is where we get most of our revenue in. Almost 39% of our revenue comes from property taxes. That brings in just over $5 million overall in gross amount. And then we have a number of transfers. Those enterprise funds that aren't supported by general fund tax dollars pay rent to City Hall. That's water and sewer. That's the electric fund. They have office space here, but they're not supported by the general fund tax dollars. So there's a payment. And they also make a payment in lieu of taxes. So that's based on the value of their utility net assets multiplied by the property tax rate. So they are significantly paying their fair share as well. So you can kind of see what that does for the budget with the transfers. And Parks and Rec are just over $2 million. State shared revenue, grants again. And so the total with interest income is just over $13 million in revenue projected for 25. Expenditures, and typically this is kind of a battle for who's number one on the expenditure side between parks and public safety. It kind of fluctuates year over year. So this year, the winner is Parks and Rec, slightly at 4.1 million, with public safety coming in just over 4 million. So those are our two big general fund users of the general fund. And obviously, we certainly value and appreciate the service that both departments provide our city. I think our community really enjoys our parks, and then they also appreciate when they need someone from the public safety side that we answer the call, and we're available and ready to serve. So other departments, finance, this is looping in the finance director, accounting, utility billing, and Audrey also handles the IT budget as well. So you can see where that number is. And then general admin, this is city council, my office, the attorney, planner, and economic development, and then public works, which is the admin and solid waste side of it. That totals up to almost 12.5 million in total. So we'll keep going. Oops. So fund balance, you can kind of see how this has progressed over the last several years. Total general fund balance back in 2013 was 3.1 million. We'll be at projected to be about 7.1 million for 2025. You can see how that's grown. Unrestricted general fund balance will be 2.3 million in 2013 to 4.6 million in 2025. So we have two restrictions in the fund balance, and that's at the marina and the refuse collection. It's about 2.1 million that we set aside for those two budgets, which results in the unrestricted fund balance designation. So these monies are set aside for really our bond debt obligations and for maintenance for those two facilities. So again, you can kind of see how both the total balance and the unrestricted balance in our fund balance has shaped up over the last 10 years or so. Going back to our unfunded liability, this is, again, we spend time on this because it's a big commitment and it's a big number that we need to make sure that we manage appropriately. So you can kind of see how we've handled that over the last 5 years or so. Back in 2019, we were 80% funded. We're again up to 92% funded at the end of 23. And with this extra commitment to our unfunded accrued liabilities, we desire to remain in that low to mid 90s and try to continue to make headway on that. Other things that City Council has done over the course of time, again, that's to your credit, is we've made the significant contributions, but we also have, these are not easy decisions to make. And I understand that and appreciate that. We've reduced pension benefits of all of our 4 employee divisions. New hires are now defined contribution. And we've increased our annual contribution over the last 7 years. So 6.2 million additional payments. And again, we're proposing 400,000 in additional for 25. So just looking again graphically at the taxable value, how that has shaped up. This chart goes back to 2010. So in 2010 to 2012, we lost about $96 million in taxable value during that difficult economic time. It really took us based on Headley and Proposal A. It took us 9 years to recoup those losses. The way this works is our taxable value can drop like a rock, but our recovery is tied to the rate of inflation. So we have to, while we can drop very quickly, our recovery is very gradual and slow. And so it's taken us 9 years to recoup the losses that we had back in 2010 to 12. So we have recovered those losses, which is the good news. It's just a little frustrating that it takes local units, local governments this long to bounce back, which is something that we talk to our lobbyists in Lansing, the Michigan Municipal League, and others to assist us in helping that effort. And it's an ongoing challenge, but we'll keep trying to press forward. We are forecasting a 3.8% increase again in 2025 to our taxable value, which that will bring our value up to just under 720 million for 2025. We'll run through these very quickly. You all have approved our capital improvement plan, so this is kind of a review, but just as a refresher, these are our capital projects that will be going through and completing in 2025. And the buildings and grounds budget, some projects at the public safety east. This is replacing the radiant tube heaters. We have an HVAC that's dated from 1989 that will be replaced. We have a firing range in City Hall in the basement that our officers and public safety train on and keep their certifications on. That has needed some TLC for a number of years. So we'll be going in and doing some cleanup and some upgrades to that firing range in the basement. Again, making the AV improvements here in this building and some security enhancements in and around City Hall as associated with our ARPA City County project. And then the Historical Museum behind us, we're responsible for outdoor maintenance. There's a number of cedar columns around the building that have just deteriorated to the point where we need to invest some dollars into getting that upgraded. Parks and special facilities. Again, the big one is Pennsylvania Park project. That's $350,000. Winter Sports Park master planning. Again, this is in combination with our ARPA dollars, doing our master plan, and then doing site improvements that result from, again, engaging with the public on what our master plan will look like and components that the public is interested in seeing at the Winter Sports Park. Just some regular routine maintenance at our grinder pumps at Bates Park. And then we have historically put in $150,000 into the Little Traverse Wheelway resurfacing, kind of taking sections of that at a time and doing a resurface. We do have a project in we call Bayfront East. So this would be the turnaround bathrooms at the Bayfront, kind of taking where we left off with the concrete, replacing all the asphalt with concrete from that point to really to behind Kilwins, past behind Kilwins, and tying that concrete, kind of having that all concrete through there. Be a wider section as well. That section is in pretty bad shape as you drive through there or ride through there or walk through there. So that's a project that we really need to address and have needed to address for a while. And then the Magnus Park master plan. So these are both TIFA projects on the Bayfront. So we're really due for kind of a refresh of Magnus Park. It's widely used. It generates income for the city. It exceeds our expenditures from a revenue standpoint. So we really need to kind of think about reinvesting into that facility from a utility standpoint. So the master plan will assist us in that effort as we go through and look at what that next 5 to 10 year period would look like within our campground at Magnus Park. Streets and drainage. So our big project next year in the street department is a reconstruction of Howard Street. So this would be from Sheridan to State Street. This would be essentially removing all of the asphalt, all of the sub-base curbing, sidewalks, replacing all of the water and sewer, putting new sidewalks in, curbing, gutters. So this would be a complete reconstruct of that street. So that's very costly to do. But it's one of those things that this was the next street that was on our list and certainly will be a nice project to get completed. So there'll be other budgets that'll be impacted by that project that we'll talk about here in a minute. But for the streets and drainage, that's the big project for this year. Typically how we've done things is we do a big project and then like next year we'll take a little bit of a pause, let the budget kind of build back up, if you will. And we'll do a few street resurfacing projects, but we do a reconstruct once every other year, typically is how we've done that. So these other projects, Howard Street is replacing some tracks, the tracks that remain on East Mitchell to Michigan. Sidewalk construction and replacement is really that for the large part associated with the Howard Street project. And then the streets department also contributes to the Park Avenue project as well. Electric department. We have ongoing electric system GIS improvements. This is really updating our system to make sure that when we pull up our geographical information system, we're able to see how things are progressing through a software package and making sure that we're upgrading projects into that system. A number of residential conversion projects. These are essentially undergrounding projects. So Fulton Grove and Petoskey Street. We have Howard Street. This is associated with the reconstruction project. We'll have Morgan, Preby, Hillcrest area as an underground section. West Sheridan underground upgrade. We have some metering structure replacement. 46 kilovolt metering structure needs to be looked at and replaced. And again, the electric fund is also contributing to the Park Avenue project because there'll be new lighting associated with that project. Water and sewer, this is again associated with Howard Street reconstruct. So this is new water main. And then there's another line item at the bottom of this, which is sewer main associated with Howard Street. So a significant project for really streets, water, sewer, and electric on that street. Continuing the lead and copper inventory, the mandated inventory that's required, and then really trying to continue to look at our dead end water quality issues and areas where we can improve, where we have dead end water mains that cause us water quality concerns and issues, trying to loop those to other sections. Ongoing motor pool. So this is important because we have to keep investing in our vehicles and our equipment to make sure that when needed, they start and they're available and they're ready for us. And as we drive around, we want to make sure that we're representing the city effectively with equipment that is appropriate. So a number of vehicle upgrades, a patrol vehicle, a public safety. We'll have 2 pool staff vehicles, a wastewater treatment plant staff vehicle, a 1-ton dump truck in Public Works, a parks replacement of a 3/4 ton pickup, and the electric fund will have a bucket truck that we need to replace that dates back to 2001. And then a 4x4 pickup, a 1/2-ton pickup as well. And then we have 2 portable light towers that we would like to replace associated with this fund as well in 2025. So just overall the schedule. So tonight is our first reading of the budget. After this evening, we will post a public notice of a public hearing, which will happen unless told otherwise on December 2nd at our next meeting. Is when we will have our second reading and the public hearing and potential adoption of the budget at that time. So we have posted this document electronically on our website. The entire budget is on our website, and it has been since Thursday, November 14th. I have there's a way for citizens to engage with us with feedback and comments. To date, I've not received any comments on the budget, but I'll certainly compile those and let you know at the next meeting as you consider the budget going forward. I guess I'll open it up for questions, feedback.
We have questions. After the questions and the comments, it's the opportunity for us to have an adopt the proposal to set a public hearing on December 2nd. But I know you have other questions prior to that, so. Who would like to start with questions? Mr. Wagner.
I only have comments, actually. Year after year, I've told people, boy, I'm glad we're not Detroit. This is really complex for our little town. And so much goes into managing a city like Petoskey. And we're just fortunate as heck to have Shane and Audrey and your entire staff and leadership. This is really complicated. I mean, to know that you're flying through that, and my business end here, I consider myself a vision person, a strategy person, more than a detail person. And I'm always just really impressed that fiscal responsibility is number one. And you've given us opportunities in the past to talk about the balanced budget and flexibility in that and what we do. So just thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shields.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor Horn. To the youth out there, you made it through this thick material for all of us. But it is one of the most important things we do at council because how we spend money in our community is a reflection of our values and what's important in our community. And I like Mr. Wagner, I agree that it's a great reflection on our community that we take care of what we have.
that is shown time and time in this budget, that we're taking care of our streets, we're taking care of the places of things that we have invested in. And fiscally responsible. So that's my comment, my question. Manager Horn, I did have a list of some things that are probably more just clarification that you could probably just. So I won't go through all of those because I didn't get a chance to send those to you prior to this meeting. Just a few items real quickly here on page 10, general fund. Public safety, it's actually in the last paragraph above the chart there, public safety law enforcement calls for service. Okay, there's basically a payment, this is for the Public Safety West Station, where there was an interest from the general fund that's paid back into the electric fund. And it was set at the 2% interest rate. My question is just a learning process there of how our enterprise fund and general fund work. And is there a way to renegotiate so that the 1%, is that a state mandated fiscal thing to have it as 2%? Could it be less? And so that there's more money that stays in the general fund.
Right now,
Hit your microphone, Audrey.
right now, only the principal payments of 100,000 have been paid each year thus far.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'll continue. So the Little Traverse relay, $150,000. It's been brought up by a community member that I think is a great suggestion is what if we hold off for a couple of years, kind of hold that 150,000 so we have a larger chunk that we can use as a match for doing a larger section of the railway resurfacing so that we don't have, so it's just a brand new stretch versus old, new. So it's a little less checkerboard. I would be in favor of that, or if that's something we want to, because it was just brought up in the fall and staff needs more time to consider that.
Yeah, I've been in that discussion as well, and I think there is some merit to holding off and maybe doing a larger project. And it could be something that maybe council considers, maybe 150,000 isn't enough, and maybe we commit to 250 or whatever that number is that you all desire to see us invest in. But typically what we receive is feedback, comments about sections of the trail that need attention. And if we go more than one season, the concern is you all will be getting those calls. And that's fine. We can handle that and just say we're grouping it into one larger project and kind of building that up. But we will start getting those calls about conditions of the trail if they don't see anything going on for that period of time. But certainly that's a discussion that we can have and what makes the most sense from a strategy standpoint.
I've received calls lately in the last month and a half, comments on the issues of some of the locations on the trail. I think we set ourselves up for liability if we're not maintaining. You just mentioned maintaining what we have. If we don't maintain what we have, I have fears that we're going to end up with multiple miles of this stuff needing to be replaced. If money doesn't come through for grants, then we are going to have a real mess and possible liability for citizens on it. So I think it's important for us to continue to maintain it. 150,000 only gets how much?
Less than a mile.
Less than half a mile.
Yeah.
0.8 of a mile.
It's 8/10.
Yeah. Yeah. But I personally believe we should probably be covering the pavement on a mile at a time. I have received calls from people who are saying, you know, I fell. It's gotten real bumpy in places. And I think we're liable with that. We want what's best for the citizens. And I think stepping up and taking care of that bike path is important too. So go on, Mr. Shields.
Thanks, Mayor. So another thing that might be in the minority opinion here. So our code enforcement officer does a great job, and this is my comments are going to be no critique of Mr. Belmonte. I think he is doing a wonderful job. My recollection back when we first started talking about code enforcement officer is we were initially thinking of a part-time position with a part-time economic development position. And when I have been looking at the reports from what the code enforcement officer has been engaged in, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I apologize for that. But the number of the main desire for the code enforcement officer was to look at our dwelling spaces and not the lack of upkeep to our dwelling spaces. And I'm seeing a majority of the activities involving things like fences and grass and cars, things that historically or before the code enforcement officer were complaint driven, things that I think, I've heard from residents saying they've been seeing the code enforcement driving around. And if there's an air of, okay, we are, there's a fine line here of having the freedom to do our things that are not generating complaints from neighbors versus going out and finding a half fence in one case that was decorative, that looked like a fence and technically did not meet the code. But it was, again, something that wouldn't have been brought up if it wasn't, there was no complaining driving that. So I'm wondering if this body has any interest in is this a part-time job and not a full-time job? I understand it has real implications for someone's job, so I don't take that lightly. But just wondering if maybe Manager Horn, if there's maybe I'm not even know, and that Mr. Belmonte, there's other roles for him within public safety that's being utilized.
I feel it's very important. I think it's very important we have a full-time code enforcer. I look at what he's been working on I've sat in a couple of meetings with city attorneys and city manager discussing homes that are about to be identified as unlivable. I think he's very involved with that piece of it as well as for maintaining homes and businesses. And I also have not received one call from somebody who has complained about Tony, our code enforcer, not being fair, not working with people. As you know, we do not, the first thing he doesn't do is pull out the ticket book. We work with these individuals to get the Petoskey where it is. And I think he's doing a great job. And I think full-time is where we need to leave him. But that's my personal opinion. I don't know, council. What is your opinion, Mr. Wagner?
Then my comment is, I had agreed with the part-time before we hired somebody full-time because we saw the data that justified full-time. And the last report I saw, the data is still there. Tony can't even keep up because there's so much work to do. So my sense is, as long as we continue to have those reports, and maybe at some point the list goes down and we can justify making some adjustments.
Ms. Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think that I appreciate Derek bringing that up in the context of the conversation in terms of budgetary. I still believe that the International Property Code maintenance reporting on our website holds a special place. And if it could be made even clearer of the ability for residents and businesses to file International Property Code maintenance violations in an anonymous way, and that maybe there's just a different shift or focus on like priorities as determined by city council and the city manager of how we rate the importance of code enforcement by, is, grass that's too long, more of a priority than addressing vacancies and abandoned buildings or, obsolete structures. I guess it's more like a prioritization, and that's not really under the auspice of city council. That's at the discretion of the city manager who manages that staff person. So, while I think it's very important to possibly maintain a full-time position, perhaps it's a reprioritization of like what are the most important aspects of that job. But like I said, that could be a conversation with city council, with the manager, but also just knowing that the manager is fully responsible for his staff person and like that he's the one that delegates the responsibilities. But I do appreciate Derek saying something about that, because it's like having that historical memory of like the intention behind that job and like how that's coming to fruition on a year by year basis as we evaluate the position and the reporting back from him. So.
Mr. Shields, do you have anything else on the budget just to talk about?
Yeah, thank you. One or maybe two more. On page 13, general fund. Bottom paragraph. This is going to be a sentence that starts with site improvements. And generally, this is about Magnus Park. I believe it talks about forestry maintenance and planting. Is that just part of the general care of the Magnus Park proper, or the whole property? And this is one of those questions, maybe where I get back to me. This is minor clarification of what was meant by forestry maintenance and planting.
Yeah, I may have to get back with you on that. I'm not certain at this as I stand here today.
That's totally fine.
Excuse me, I think a little bit of it is some trees that need replacing or that are starting to die in the entrance, and just the beginning of the park that needs some either trimming, a couple replantings of different trees is what that is, but we can get more detail for you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, last one is the city owns 800 acres of natural forest land outside of city limits. That I've raised this up and in the past. Right now, hunting season, hunters could be out there going wherever they want. In the past, I've heard about trees being cut, and we're not. I question how well we are as a city of managing those 800 acres and keeping track of trespass or illegal use. I know I've been out there and seen ORV tracks all over certain areas, and that may or may not be something the city wants to approve. But I would encourage encourage city staff to consider a more thorough management plan for that property, and a management plan would then incur a cost to develop to do that. But I think it would be prudent to have a better understanding of what's happening out there. And so I'm not asking to sort of see that in this budget, but it may be something I'll bring up over the next year if encourage us to think about that further.
I took a ride out I took city manager in Parks and Rec Director Kendall Smith both out to take a look at it, and I know they are cognitive of the lack of fencing, or not fencing, but blocking off of trails and roads. And I agree. I think it's important for us to take a look at also possible forestry management in the future of that, maybe harvesting or is that good? Mr. Horn?
No, and I think the bottom line is, do we want to hang on to that, much acreage as well? Is that something that is still a priority for city council?
It's over 6 square miles that we own out there. It was originally purchased both with taxes back in the 30s, and then it was a accumulation of lands. At one time, the city manager from years ago felt that a possible winter sports area would be developed for possibly downhill skiing, cross country skiing, that type of winter sports was what that was originally planned for, but it's obvious it's a long ways out of the city, and I agree, maybe we should look at possibly selling it towards housing projects or something along that line. Anything else?
That's it, Mayor. Just want to thank you, Manager Warren, Ms. Plath, and the rest of the staff for their diligent work.
Mr. Wagner, anything?
Nothing else.
Ms. Walker?
I do have a couple of questions, if I may. So the first question I have in regards to MERS unfunded accrued liability. Shane, can you remind me at which point or which juncture is it a year that all employees went from pensions to I'm sorry, that's not how you refer to it.
Defined contribution.
Defined contribution, like, was that a date or?
Yeah, that was,
Hit your mic.
2017.
So 2017 was the date. So anybody that was hired before then would be on pensions, and anybody that was hired after that would be on defined contributions.
No.
Sorry, they're both pensions, just different types of pensions. So DB is defined contribution, defined benefit contribution. And so that was what was with the city through 2027, anyone except there were still a couple of units within public safety that they still had almost like a hybrid that was enforced until 2021. But as of right now, everyone that starts with the city is a DC, defined contribution.
Okay, so then my question is, as those that would have been with the previous arrangement, so what we would call a pension, to simplify it for my own brain. So those folks would still qualify. For example, when the Department of Public Works director retires, he would be part of that original package.
Yes.
And then there's also other employees that have been working since 2017. So if you change departments or change a job description, does that mean that you would automatically go to the new program? So there could be a potential, okay.
You would stay with the
original agreement was.
Defined benefit.
Okay, so then potentially, how many employees would be on the pension into the future?
The defined or
Yeah, the previous,
How many are left?
yes.
defined
I read it
benefit?
today. I was trying to prep.
Okay, so that would just be a question I would have for.
How about she makes note?
Lovely, that's right.
We'll get that number for you.
Thank you.
How many are on each? For people that are here, the two types of pension, the city offered what was defined benefits. You got a certain amount of your insurance, your health insurance, you received that. After, because the city could no longer afford it because it got so expensive, we switched over, and now if you retire, we will put so much money, a defined amount of money into your retirement pension of health and stuff, but we're not going to say you're going to get this big Cadillac plan that what it benefits identifies what you get. So it's more about now money rather than what kind of program we're giving you.
And a lot of counties and municipal governments went bankrupt or like were in a really difficult financial position because they had created these pensions, and it's basically for the entirety of your life.
Well, the problem was is they weren't paying in. You get down by Grand Traverse County and Traverse City, and they're $50 million in the hole because they did not pay yearly funds that were needed to keep up with it. The city has kept up with it, plus we've now put in extra money to get it up.
Thank you for that.
Actually, it's about
explanation.
93 to 94%, I believe. Is that the estimate you have?
That is the estimate if everything stays status quo right now, the way the economy is and the way their MERS investments are going right now.
But we did notice, like on the graph, we had documented up till 2023, but 2024, and obviously the projections for 2025 weren't included in the graph chart. So we are close to 94 now.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then I do have another question. If I may. Thank you,
So just before you go to that one, though, the challenge becomes for those communities that have made the hard decision and have peeled back some of those expensive benefits. We're still competing with communities that have not made those hard decisions. So when we look to hire people, they're comparing, what do you have from a pension standpoint versus what community down the road has that hasn't gone through that difficult process and is maybe in the 50% funded or 60% funded and not in a very strong position, but all they're looking at is a DB versus a DC and that benefit. So those communities that have gone through that process, we're still competing against those that have not. And so that's a challenge.
They don't have the view of the bay though. Okay. Another question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the second question I had was around the 2025 annual budget general fund revenue. And so was it just in the past couple of years that the transfers from DPW to administration have happened? Because normally DPW as an enterprise fund, they usually are self-sustaining, but they do benefit from the administrative services of the city. So that's where they pay into that. And how long has that been the case?
Transfers always,
Always.
always.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's very
So they
interesting.
pay for, for example, the services of the city manager.
Yep.
Or finance, payroll, accounts payable, are all spread out to all of those funds based on like the percentage that I might work for motor pool or work for the electric department.
Right.
And then also the electric fund, electric, water and sewer, because they are enterprise tax or enterprise funds, they do have to pay equal amounts, equal to the tax amount. And so that's why there's a contribution to the general fund.
Okay, so that's them covering their costs across the board and giving that annual contribution to the administrative staff because they do benefit from that. And so that's how their revenue gets dispersed to the general fund is through that means. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my other question. And then lastly, on the next page about expenditures. So Public Works normally doesn't have, well, maybe this is where the expenditure is. Public Works normally does not have, normally because they are an enterprise fund. So here you're seeing where Public Works Administration and Solid Waste is put under the general fund. Can you highlight why that is or if that's common from year to year in the budget?
Yeah, do you want me to speak?
Go ahead, Roger,
Okay,
please.
so the administration for Department of Public Works consists of the DPW director and also Jason Bates' position as in construction and part of an admin assistant that takes care of parks, zoning and DPW. It's a shared position. So that's the administration portion of that. And the reason it's put into the general fund is, for example, Mike Robbins is everywhere doing everything for every fund, not. Oh, thank God, he's not here to hear that. It would be too hard to just assign a certain percentage of him to every single one of the funds. It's easier just to put him and a few other people in admin and disperse them through the transfer of funds.
And then Solid Waste is also underneath
And then
there.
the solid waste would be, since the city picks up the brush, the leaf pickup, recycling, those items are all categorized under Department of Public Works within the general fund.
And not under their enterprise fund, but under the general fund. Thank you.
Costs are with the general.
And I think that's all my questions, Mayor. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Demore, I bet you have some questions.
Actually have a couple. First of all, I want to thank the city manager and Ms. Plath. They met with me today. I'm going out of town, so they spent an hour and a half with me fielding my questions, which is why I only have a couple now. So first of all, these are just two kind of nuggets of learning that I had today, and you guys may already know this, but it seemed worth calling out both for the folks at the table and the public. So I'm looking at just page 2 of the introduction. On page 2 of the introduction, the paragraph that's between the two graphs explains that the fund balance of including restricted funds, that $7 million number, or 57% of fund expenditures. But the very last sentence really, to me, tells the story, because that $4 million plus is what's available fund balance out of unrestricted funds. And so today, I think, Audrey, you said that was actually a 40% number as opposed to a 57% number when we include restricted funds.
Right, when you include restricted, then it is 57, otherwise it's in the 40s each year.
Yep, it was just under 40, I think, when we looked at that. So I think that's really important to see, because that's really what the availability is, since the others are restricted.
Correct.
Okay. And then second of all, we went kind of into a deep dive about MERS and unfunded liabilities. And what I saw was that we're making a little bit lower contribution than we have in years past. And I ask about that because, to me, I always think if we're going to look at fund balance expenditures, we should look at reducing debt if at all possible. And my question to Audrey was, well, why are we reducing that? And my understanding was you were saying that it's because we kind of have that target of 92% that's been set by City Council. In that discussion, I also learned for the first time that the unfunded liability is 92%, but there are administrative fees that are associated with that. And if you add those administrative fees in, which are continuing, we're only at 86%. So I'm not trying to take away in any way from what we've accomplished. But I think looking at this, I kind of want to put it on everybody's radar that as far as I see this, I'd like to aim for higher than 92% if it's something that we can do to continue to push against that debt as much as possible, if it's something that we can do. So that's it. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to explain the difference, because if you look at our audit, it'll have 1%. And then when you look at our budget or or what MERS annual report states, it's a higher number. So it's not comparing apples to apples, because auditors are required per GASB 86, I think it is, to provide the readers with the net position liability. So the liability includes, their administration fees for administering the plan. So that's why there's that difference.
So it's very possible I may not be here at the next meeting, so I just wanted everybody to kind of, think about that possibility of trying to at least match, if not exceed, what we're paying to kind of push up that percentage. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've paid six payments of $1 million over the last 6 years, and cut back this one to 400,000 for a payment off.
Yeah, I think last year or 2024 was
$500,000.
Yeah, or 600,000. Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, we kind of cut back on it, but we are in good straits statewide, municipality wise.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Position.
Next, go ahead, Miss. No? Okay. Well, do you want to release your students, or what do you, I saw interaction going, and I feel, having had children myself, I know if they have homework to do or something important, it's up to you how you'd like to do it. Okay. You guys sat through the most financial piece of the whole city right here tonight. It was probably the driest stuff that you will sit through. If you were to come back another meeting, you'd go, boy, this is more exciting than numbers. Okay, so do come back and visit us. Bye, guys. Okay. So we're looking for motion for a public hearing on this. After I have that, I'll go to the public and ask if there's comment. Mr. Shields,
So moved.
I'll be happy to second the motion, Mayor.
I have a motion from Mr. Shields and a second from Ms. Walker. Any other discussion, or does public wish to weigh in on this long budget? No. Council, any comments? I go to Ms. Beck for roll to set the public hearing for December.
Yes.
7th.
Walker,
Yes.
Moore,
Aye.
Wagner.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Well, we have 3 more items on the board, and then when we go into closed session, we will be coming back, but there will be no action taken when we come back, just to let you know. The next one is a discussion regarding Mr. Shields' submittal concerning general fund reserves. Mr. Horn, do you wish to?
No, I'll turn it over to Mr. Shields.
I see. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Major Horn. So as the background describes there, this was something I just wanted to give this opportunity for this board to discuss the idea of general fund surplus. And is there a point where it is to allocate it at someplace versus just putting it into the reserves for that reserve to keep growing? And so the whereas statements that I penned here kind of talk about the importance of a reserve balance to weather emergencies. It talks about the importance of us to prudently allocate taxpayer money, and then it makes a suggestion for discussion purposes about what percentage of a general fund reserve do we want to maintain, and is there if in the future this body want to utilize some of those surpluses at the end of the year, my thought would that it would be best to have that as a policy versus maybe a one-time discussion. So it's my attempt to start that discussion and see if there's interest in discussing this further. The more I just raised the good question about what the actual percentage of general fund reserve is, versus the total general fund reserves versus do we take out the restricted funds? That's a good question that is not addressed in my resolution adequately. So that's my opening.
I wish to speak. Mr. Moore.
So I wrote this out so I didn't miss anything. While I support the underlying principle that surplus fund balance should be assessed by council members from time to time to consider the use of those funds to directly benefit community members, I don't support binding the discretion of council members moving forward as this resolution proposes. Since the context for that type of decision-making is always in flux, due to ongoing changes. We've talked about this tonight, in fact, state revenue sharing, tax base, the impact of Headley, Prop A, imposition of and recalculations of unfunded liabilities, along with ever-changing economic conditions. I'd suggest it's very important that elected officials retain the agency to exercise their judgment to make decisions about the use of fund balance based upon the circumstances before them at any given point in time, rather than being bound by a percentage deemed appropriate going forward by us at this point in time. Thank you.
Mr. Wagner, Ms. Walker, anything?
I appreciate Derek bringing it up. I appreciate that component, and it does feel like one of those things that there are so many variables that change over time. And maybe there's different wording in the whereas or something, but the idea of having some guidance as we've looked to have on other things like brownfields and so on, at a policy level, I think is good, but it's got to have a lot of flexibility.
Ms. Walker.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate Derek's idea behind that because like he expressed earlier, like our budgets are definitely a reflection of our value. And it's kind of well known that there are certain, county and municipal governments that do have a really healthy general tax fund and are sitting on, quote unquote, sitting on a lot of money. And at what point is our like moral and ethical obligation to get up off of public funds to spend for the general good of our population? So I think that there's like that, striking that balance. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of variables and it's very complex about what a general fund balance actually means and translated into percentages. So that being said, when we look at and it's very helpful that now our city manager is providing like our general fund balance on a monthly basis, like comparing that to what has been budgeted for the calendar year and then what the actuals are. And so there's a variety of things that we're like, we far exceeded revenues that were kind of unpredictable. So like the interest income, for example, that we've gained as a source of revenue for non-operating sources of revenue and interest income, like we budgeted very conservatively at like $75,000 for the year. And we've accrued, over 165 of interest income. So is that interest income from like the general fund sitting in an account gaining that interest? So that's like
that is monthly interest out of our concentration account. So we have one checking account for all of the funds.
Okay.
And so the number that you see right now won't continue. It will be at the end of the year dispersed among all of the funds.
Okay.
Based on a cash allocation, their fund balances per month. But this was the general fund most interest, I went back to 2002, that's ever been booked just because of the certain, between the inflation rate obviously drives up the bank rates, so you make more money in a checking account, less money in stocks and bonds kind of thing. So as the Fed is dropping the interest rates for mortgages and stuff, this interest unfortunately will not continue at this rate, which is unfortunate. So part of it will be dispersed at the end, not dispersed, but reallocated to its rightful owner.
That's helpful to know, because like when you're looking at percentages, it's like in constant fluctuation, but the theme I still think is valid of like lifting that theme, elevating that idea of like, what are we responsible in terms of public good and getting up off of money when you like, I don't like to use the term hoarding, but I don't know if there's like a real like financial term for that. But I appreciate Derek saying that this is a layperson's term. You can't hoard the money, folks. You gotta like get up off of it and spend it on public good. So I do think that should be a continual evaluation as we evaluate budgetary from year to year, but also at like quarterly or something of that nature. So I want to keep the conversation going. Thanks.
I think it has accumulated. The numbers you gave are 2022, and I think if you go to, I gave the city manager an address that will give you 2023 state reports on the county, every municipality, my community. It's a database, a data dashboard. I think you'll find those numbers will be more helpful, Derek, on your endeavor on this. The council's had trouble spending 600,000. We've had that for 3 years. And I think right now we should be making plans on, we're doing project ideas for the parks. I think we should complete those. I think we should look at going to a parks and rec millage next November. And that's why I think we need to, and then we can start looking at, do we want to touch fund balance that is unrestricted fund balance? I think it's healthy for us to have that amount of money so we can leverage more money when we get to the trail. Repairing the trail, which we're looking at $21 million. I think having that fund balance sitting there for several $1 million it will help us leverage more stuff of us making a commitment to get that bike path fixed if we really want that. I think it also shows the public that we are savers and we're not just all spenders. And I think when we look at a millage for the winter sports park and all of the other parks and Penn and especially the roller blade place down there, the skate park, I think it's real important for us to have some funds available in the background that we can utilize to leverage more grants. So I can't support this at this point. I think it's a nice idea, but I can't support this. Sorry. Okay, anyone else wish to speak? Ms. Demore?
Oh, just two things. Some of that interest that Ms. Walker was asking about. Oh, thank you, guys. Some of that interest that Ms. Walker was talking about would be allocated to restricted funds, correct?
No, the two restricted funds are within the general fund.
Okay. But kind of the question came up earlier, as far as fund balance for projects, we don't have access to fund balance that's in those restricted funds unless it's for those restricted.
Right.
That is correct. We
Purposes.
cannot use that. So the Marina Reserve is only for marina operations. So for example, in the CIP, if you add up marina costs for upgrades to the piers, parking lot, new decking for A, C, and D, for years 2026 through 2028, it totals $850,000. And right now the reserve in the Marina Reserve was sitting in, where is it? 1.8, I think.
Almost
I can't
$2
see
million.
it. Yeah, because the 2 million includes the tax for the refuge there. So that's a lot of money that will need to be spent out of that restricted, just so it might look like a lot, but there's a lot that needs to be done within the marina. And as far as the unrestricted fund balance, we had 1 year out of 20 years that we did not have to roll back our millage. And we're expecting another rollback. The what was it? 3.1 is what the state inflationary rate came out with a couple weeks ago. So it will not be over 5% again, unless unfortunately there would be a recession or, a downturn with high inflation again. And then let's see, what else did I have on that? We are going to have a lot of additional costs in the future with all the increased housing that we're providing. So it will necessitate more public safety officers possibly, which would mean another public safety car, because there will be, accidents will happen or calls, there'll be election, there'll be how many more voters. So our staff, our office staff might have to increase in the future, as well as the billings, how many more hundreds of bills each month, and processing all the payments that come in for all of those electric bills, as well as all the tax on the infrastructure, for the water and sewer. So we have costs coming up that
we will not be getting money from the taxes from those two places for 12 years to have any coverage of it. So it's a flat line as far as what we will gain. So we're going to be dumping more money into the two units, even the other ones down on Emmett Street, but you got 264 units coming in that are going to need billings. For each of them are going to get their own electric, their own water, they're going to get public safety, they're going to get finance, they're going to register to vote. There's all of those pieces. So I think it's good to have a backup of funds in case the economy does go south, that we aren't left holding the bag. Mr. Moore.
I just had one final point. I'm circling back to my argument to increase debt payoff. Okay. I mean, in the category of being savers rather than spenders, And in the category of, modeling for the community in advance of a potential recreational millage, again, it isn't to say we haven't done a great job with these unfunded mandates, but let's either maintain at the level we were, or if we're going to use resources, let's pay some more debt off. I think that's a very worthy thing to model for the community. So that's the end of my pitch.
Are we looking at, I know we're looking at replacing down on Sheridan Public Works. Will some of the enterprise funds that some of those will go towards that, will it not?
Yeah, when we get to that point, that's a little ways down the road, but that could be a bond project as well.
Okay.
It's a significant undertaking, but yes.
So there'll be possible.
Mhm.
Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks. If I may respond to my colleagues, thank you for engaging in this dialogue. I have a couple points of clarification. I'm definitely not talking about not having a balanced budget. I think every year that is crucial. And I am definitely a favor of being a saver over spender. So this clarification, this proposal of policy acknowledges those, in fact. But there is the idea, and I don't think the city is hoarding. I don't think, I wouldn't have that perspective even if we had much higher reserves, but there is the perception and there is the responsibility to the tax rate that we tax people. So we're asking for a millage to tax people more. There is that perception we have to be aware of to be utilizing money. So we're not just continuing each year putting reserves in having a blossoming reserve fund. The policy is simply to bring that about, as my colleague, Mr. Moore mentioned, the binding aspect. I actually wrote in the word may versus shall, which is I understand in resolutions, you want to stick to the shalls. I threw the may there because I do think this particular type of policy, it is important to have the agency for future bodies to have that flexibility based off of the conditions that they are in at that time. An example of why, what generated this for me was the discussion we're having in the Winter Sports Park. And the flexibility that potentially, and in addition, I wrote that 278,000 is the proposed surplus at the end of this year. To have that 278,000 to be an additional part for that Winter Sports Park conversation may come in handy. That's why I raised it. I appreciate the discussion. Sounds like it's just food for thought for now, and I'm okay with that.
We are allowed put our big boy pants on though, and to vote money for the Winter Sports Park from the unfunded budget, unrestricted money that we have in general fund. We can vote on that today and say we're going to put 2 million into it. So we're not restricted in any way from city council supporting a project such as the Winter Sports Park or any of those with that fund. So there is no restriction at this point, no handcuffs. Mr. Moore.
Just one more, since we're having this lively dialogue, we have a student watching. This is what it's all about. I think where there's no agency in the proposal is the 55%. So I hear what you're saying about the may, but the 55% is what concerns me because that's part of this fluidity that somebody sitting at this table, might need to consider in light of all the things we've already listed. So, but thank you. Good conversation.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Moving along. Thank you. Moving along, it's a discussion regarding deer management. City Manager Horn.
No, this has been an ongoing discussion that we've had in the past. I was asked to kind of put a kind of a clearinghouse for residents to engage with us specifically on deer population concerns. So I've listed the concerns that the folks that have responded to that complaint form and where they're located since that went live back in July. I tried to capture, I did a search in this group and tried to capture the locations of where these were coming from, but I was asked to kind of keep this discussion going, so it's just on for further conversation and dialogue with city council on how you would like to proceed.
I see 5 of the calls that you received from 102 State Street. 5 of the 14 were from one location. Was it that did they claim what the problem was? They weren't attacking people or anything?
No, just eating their plant vegetation and.
Okay. All right.
That's close to Elizabeth Street and like the Bear River.
That's all the way down to the end.
Yeah, very end.
Mr. Wagner.
Thanks, Mayor. And Shane for collecting the data and for Derek bringing it up. I still remember back to the presentation we had from the experts at Michigan State. It's a real problem across the state. I tell people all the time, car deer accidents, we're #1 in the country. And I'm glad we have the data for downtown. My wife right down here by the Bayfront Park. So as my son was out hunting and contacted her, she looked out the window and there was a 6-point buck at her condo lawn. So they're everywhere. She didn't complain about it, but I feel that, yeah, I mean, it's a real issue, but doing like to regulate this, I think we spoke about it briefly, Derek, to do this just in Petoskey and try and control the deer isn't going to solve the problem. We have to work with our county and townships, the city, and commit to I believe a multi-year culling of the deer. So that's again, not just as we spoke, Mayor, but when the experts were here, I think you said something about sharpshooters in the city and so on, and that's not what I envisioned. It's got to control them outside the city, where there's thousands of them.
Unfortunately, this college, I believe, has stated that they would not go along with it, pulling on their property. Or did they tell you something else, Derek?
Yeah, the college president, I spoke with him. He said that he would bring it to his board, and if there was a ask from the city, he would glad to have that conversation. But he would not take the initiative on his own. He'd want the city to lead.
Perhaps what we should do is look at getting together with the county, the 2 townships, the city, the college, the hospital, get together and discuss it, because I don't see, like in Charlevoix, they shot herds of deer. 18, 20 deer will accumulate or gather down by the Columbus Beach Club, or Chicago Club, down by that area. And they were very easy for the sharpshooters to come in and just sit there and pick them all off right there, all as a group. But I have yet to see packs of them running anymore. I see 1 here, 3 here, 2 here. And I hate to see somebody in a truck with a couple guys with guns on the top of a truck or a helicopter or a plane flying around shooting deer out of backyards and stuff. I just don't think that's safe. So I think what we need to do is talk about, like Mr. Wagner said, let's get everybody together and see if we can come up with a plan that would work for all of us. Mr. Demore.
So let me begin by saying I know nothing about this, but I did some research because I really wanted to learn, and I really could not find anywhere where they successfully dealt with this problem through a number of means, like with, doing a cost benefit analysis, that sort of thing. However, this is purely anecdotal, but I read one article that said that Rochester Hills had implemented many non-lethal methods quite successfully. So that might be something we could follow up on. I don't know what it means. But as far as these culls, there's something called a compensatory rebound phenomena, where actually when you cull, you end up with more than if you don't cull. And again, this is not my area of expertise. But I thought maybe this success or alleged success that Rochester Hills had might be something worth at least looking at.
I think they paid for the neighborhoods, the subdivisions to grow better stuff. So the deer would go eat better stuff next door is what it was. But I don't know. What do you want, Miss?
What do you want? What do you have? So I know that Meridian Township and the city of Charlevoix have had calls. How you determine success, I guess that's a variable that can be determined. I don't know what those communities would say about them, but I know they both invested in calls, and they usually would hire law enforcement to do the calling. And also just noticing deer observation and patterns, they usually run the same kind of routes, and those might have seasonal variations, but you know, the deer coming in from the east side of town through the college trails there, and then on the north side of town through like Bayview and the woods there, abutting Bear Creek Township, and then to the south. I mean, there's definitely, and because we are landlocked with the lake, it's almost like you could easily kind of track the migration of deer patterns to know how to do a call. I don't think it's that much of a study to determine the patterns of the troops of deer coming into our communities right now. And you're saying, there's a lot of overlap, and whether or not we'd be able to leverage like a public partnership to do that, I think it becomes increasingly more difficult as you try to partner with Resort Township and Bear Creek and the county to deal with that. But that being said, I do think it should remain, and I appreciate the data of like people calling in. And obviously there's like some repeat offenders of like the deer that are gathering on State Street on their way down to the Bear River Valley. But I do appreciate us continuing to have that conversation, because it comes up from time to time, especially in our ward conventions.
3 years ago, I left city council and went home. It was in the wintertime. And I felt it was cold in my house. It was 10:30, it was starting at 7, it was a late one, and I walked into the house. I took off my shoes and socks, and I was gonna jump into bed, and I heard glass crack underneath my feet. I didn't get cut. I turned on the light and I saw a hole through my bed, one of my large bedroom windows, where a deer had come through, being chased by a coyote that the neighbors saw down the street, chasing a coyote, chasing deer. It only cost me $620 to replace the window, okay? But I still feel, they were here first. Don't plant what they eat. And I've learned not to plant stuff that they're gonna eat. They'll eat every tulip you got, they'll eat so with the rabbits, but I don't know. I hope, Mr. Horn, could you possibly look into doing something jointly with meeting the college and the 2 townships, county? Mr. Shields?
Thanks, Mayor. A couple comments. One, when Mr. Moore, when the presentation was here, they went through all the different options, and the non-lethal ones have very little success and are very expensive. The short answer, my take was the call was the best recommendation coming from the DNR. We had the state wildlife deer biologist here, Chad was here. And that was coming his recommendation. There was one success story in the greater Lansing area where they used a call. With my comments about, or my thoughts about the collaboration, here's the thing, deer, one deer will be starting to congregate after the rut here, so they'll start to group up. And then 2, in the city was the denser urban area versus the township where there's hunting pressure, so deer moving around, and there isn't the dense, the dense congregation of dwellings of people, of their landscaping. So the problem we have here in the city is you have deer that they're very comfortable, and probably a lot of us have been really close to deer and they're not scared of us. So you have that problem where they can go 10 feet to the next neighbor, to the next neighbor, to the next neighbor. So a call, yes, does not solve the problem, but it helps mitigate and manage the problem, which is what I'm hearing from a lot of constituents, the desire to do something and to plant things. I've planted, that is my professional, their job is to understand what to plant, what not to plant. They will eat anything they've planted. I've spent hundreds of dollars on native plants and they continue to eat them, even the ones that are deer resistant. Yeah, well, because, and so here's the another important point. We humans have created this system. This isn't a natural. Deer historically before us here were not in the numbers that they are now. So we're creating systems where there is a humane issue for the deer who are going to starve or get hit by cars, which is going to be arguably a worse way to die than from a sharpshooter. And some of the ways that cities have done that is not with just people driving around and hunters, but it is about public safety doing that. So my one ask is if this was supported, was to have the public safety department and Manager Horn provide a proposal for us to consider and vote on for management.
I would suggest that we go to professionals and put it out and bring in a professional bids on this, because it's gonna be tens of thousands of dollars to do this. They're gonna charge $6,000 to $8,000 a deer. That's what Charlevoix paid, $600 a deer, and that was 2-3 years ago. Also, Meridian Township, I think we should check with them, but for 2 years they did it, and you understand Meridian Township, which is the place you're talking by Lansing, they have a 1 by 2 mile swamp that they went in and harvested the deer out of. And they found when they went back, there were just as many deer the second time and the third time. I don't know where they're at now with that. It's something maybe Mr. Horn, you could check with Meridian Township and see what their deer situation is. But I don't like the idea of public safety driving around shooting deer. That just doesn't seem, I don't know. I suppose if they had silencers and stuff like that, but then
I know one thing Charlevoix is interested in looking at is maybe modifying some zoning to allow front yard fencing and things like that. I don't know that that's a great aesthetic answer. But I know that they're looking into their zoning and potentially opening that up a little bit for properties to put fences in the front yard.
I think you're gonna have to hire, we're gonna have to keep our public safety, public code enforcer involved, because I see everybody with a single gated community of their own fences around their houses at 6 to 7 feet in their front yard.
Yeah, that does not permit neighborhood and community, so.
That does not make you for a walkable, rideable community, and I think we want a walkable, friendly community that does not have stockades up in front of everybody's home with 6-7 foot fence wrapping around it. It just doesn't seem to me like a happy community, really. Takes the character away. So what do you want?
I've always wondered if there's a need, and maybe we all see it. I've seen it at my house. Do we need to have somewhat of an inventory of this is the deer population in the city? Kind of, obviously you're not going to be exact, but have we ever done a survey or study to?
No, we have not.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Moore.
Well, I was just gonna say, that's my recollection from that presentation, was they said that was the first place to start.
Yeah.
That we only have anecdotal evidence about the density of deer here. And so to me, that.
How many deer are running around? Is it the same deer going to my house, your house? You know, are there 5 deer that everybody is calling about because it's in this State Street or the Cherry and the Quinlan, Cherry and Carlton, Wacazoo that we got the call? I think it'd be best to do somehow take an inventory. What is the problem?
Yes.
How big is the problem? And then let's look. I know to shoot them up with birth control isn't not real successful. All those things that have been looked at are not real successful, so. I don't think they take the pill all the time. So anyway, moving along. Are you good with this one? Let's move along to discussion on our potential dates for the combined meeting of the city council and the downtown management board.
So I just threw this back out. I know we've tried to secure a date and haven't really landed on one, so we're kind of back to kind of looking at schedules as we get into the first of the year. I know we have, just as a reminder, we have January 10th on our schedule for city attorney interviews. But just trying to nail down a date for our combined meeting with DMB.
Council, what do you have? I'm probably, being that I'm kind of retired, I probably am I have more flexibility than most of you. I'm locked down for a while. What do you want to do?
I just had a question before we lock down. I mean, we can lock down dates, that's fine, but is there like aggregated agenda that we want to discuss with DMB? Is it budgetary related?
Do you want to go through that real quick?
Thank you.
I think part of it was talking through the parking fund and the discussion of a parking structure. Is it something we are saving for or not? We're talking about the RRC priority redevelopment sites. And then also the downtown TIF, and whether that is something that we continue. It wouldn't close out for 12 more years. There isn't a pending development to happen, so is it something we disband, and when something comes forward, we look at other tools? So there's at least those three things.
Yeah, I think there was another one, but we
Yeah, I
get the
think
agenda. There were 4, I think, at the last.
Yeah.
But so those are going to take those are going to take some time. So if we got started with just 2 or 3 on the list and try to chop off, I know you were interested. What it works for you guys? Are we looking into January? I take it. For sure, I would think. Are we looking at February? What do you see? Now, the RRC, we need to revisit that ourselves as a council, because there are properties that are not in the downtown that are redevelopment ready, community identified. We want to possibly change those, look at where we're at with those. We don't have a specific number by state rules. You don't have to have a certain number, so we can add more, we can add less. The benefit is the state would then help advertise those possibly when stuff did come around, developers. What do you see available at this point, I'll start with Ms. Demore. I know you're a traveler and worker and.
Well, I'm just wondering, what are you looking at?
February.
What day, or after hours or that sort of thing? What do you think?
Yeah, it would be a regular evening meeting.
Okay.
And I guess the day of the week, it doesn't really matter.
When does the DMB normally meet?
They meet the third Tuesday of the month. Yep. So in January would be the 21st. If you wanted to have it at one of their regular meetings.
Is that at 6 o'clock?
Yes, they're all 6.
I can do that one. I don't know about others.
What's the date then? January
21st.
21st.
It's the day after our meeting.
We'd have city council and then we'd have that meeting with them.
That works for me.
That works for me.
we could have pizza here, we do it early. Pizza at 5:30 and 6 o'clock, we start the meeting.
Is that a busy meeting?
Oh.
If you're thinking the regular meeting, that's gonna be their organizational meeting, and they're also going to have to do their annual DDA, joint DMP DDA meeting.
But that only takes
Yeah, it doesn't take that
5
much time.
minutes. 10 minutes.
Yeah.
How long is it gonna take you the other part of your meeting to do that, the rest of it?
Well, I'd say this meeting needs to be a good 2 hours.
Okay, then that won't work.
How about the next day, the 22nd? We can't do it. That's planning. No, it's not planning commission. That'd be the.
How about your next meeting, your meeting in February 18th? I know that's a little ways away. The 18th of February is
Tuesday?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, January?
It's the third Tuesday.
What about the 28th?
I can't do that.
Yeah, I can't either. We're into February now.
Or Monday, maybe.
That's the 27th.
No.
14th of January.
You said
Valentine's Day.
January.
Of January.
Sorry.
Well, she's got you to.
That's a good February.
How about February? Is it too late to wait till your meeting date on February 18th and meet then instead of your meeting date?
I guess not.
Well, it sounds, maybe we don't want to have it at either our meeting, obviously, or their meeting, just.
Let's come up with another date.
February 4th.
Did you, who said January 14th? Was that voted down?
That's Yak.
Oh,
well.
14th is a Tuesday.
Can you move that?
Oh, wait,
Can
sorry.
you move that with the kids?
No. Hold on.
It's a Tuesday.
No, the 14th. No, the 14th I can do. Sorry. I can do the 14th.
January 14th, a Tuesday. Will that work for everybody? Do we have any complaints? Comments?
can we potentially get a backup date? We'll be going through this with DMB tomorrow night. So I got January 14th.
Do you want to do the 15th the next day?
That's planning commission, but we could meet. Yeah,
we can still meet.
We can still
in the
meet.
other
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
The other room, Wednesday, January 15th, a Wednesday. Would that your backup? Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, so you got 2 dates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I like how you guys all brought your planners. This is really spectacular. You did? Oh, well, see, but it worked out. Okay. Here's what we have. We have going into closed session. So what that means. Oh, city council comments. I'll start with Ward 4, Miss Walker.
Always starts with me. I want to say thank you, but I always want to say thank you because I'm so grateful to this place I live. I appreciate the amount of feedback and responses we've gotten in regards to the proposed changes to Pennsylvania Park, specifically from our veterans community, just expressing their concern about moving the war memorials outside of Pennsylvania Park and being very centralized. Well, I understand the intention to try to bring traffic towards the Arlington Park area and trying to, with the children's garden being proposed for that vicinity and future upgrades to that area, I understand wanting to bring more traffic down there. I just, from the feedback that we're getting thus far, it feels like maybe that isn't quite the right intention of moving our monuments and our war memorials out of Pennsylvania Park. So I do appreciate that ongoing discussion and veterans and their families contributing to that evolving discussion. Thanks.
Ward 1, Mr. Moore.
Concurring with Lindsay's comments, both Derek and I attended a meeting of the vets at the American Legion. There were also veterans there from VFW Post 2051, one of whom is with us this evening. And uniformly, the input received was to maintain the monuments in Pennsylvania Park, because the thinking is the importance of people visiting, people living here, being able to visit the monuments, understanding their significance, and that's where essentially the most traffic is in town. So certainly if that's the veterans' perspective, I support the veterans' perspective. And second of all, just want to say thank you to all the folks at Public Safety who did a deep dive with the Petoskey Youth Advisory Council members. It was awesome. They did fingerprinting in a crime scene. They used the jaws of life, and it's possible that I was forced into using the jaws of life in an outfit that likely will turn up somewhere. Yeah, that's it.
Did anybody get tased?
Ward 2, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a board member from Rotary reach out to me, and we engaged in very productive, constructive conversation about the Winter Sports Park and their involvement in making improvements out there. And so I look forward to continuing to have constructive dialogue about that. I thank Ms. Coronado for her comments, and just want to reiterate that I think this body, but speaking just for myself, is very interested in collaborating and making improvements to the Winter Sports Park, and the process that we have to go through, I think is necessary. And so I appreciate the patience on and the generosity from Rotary.
Ward 3.
Two things. One is that, sorry, Val Meyerson left. I wanted to thank her for the opportunity to facilitate 2 focus groups last week as part of their master plan, and Shane Horn for being part of one of them. The other one was with moms and little kids. It was interesting. They did a lot of learning. People are proud of our library and all it brings. The second one is a super difficult one. I met with the mayor and with Shane last week, and I'm intending to resign from council on January 1st. I'll finish out December. I've had some business things come up. I have a partner who can't participate in my business, and it's going to be a crazy, hectic year. So it's been a great 5 years. I'll say more in a couple of weeks, but the mayor felt it was best if I announced that publicly and not through an email or something else.
Well, I like to say, Wags, I know you're not going very far, very away, that you will continue to be a valuable asset and input into the city operations. You've had 5 years of experience here, very positive, and it's been great. I know I'm speaking for the rest of council when we truly appreciate your efforts and your working with us. More to come, but I'm glad you're going to spend the next 2 meetings with us. Gives me a chance to identify an individual in your ward. I know we've talked about some individuals already. We'll work out by bringing somebody good to city council. Next, I'd like to say, I see that the war memorials, in talking with Shane, the war memorials do not, the intent of the city is not to move those. I think what the best thing the city should do with those is to take the ones that are on the wrong side of the sidewalk, the west side of the sidewalk, put them over on the east side, because I've gone to too many arts in the park and seen people climbing up and around them, that World War II memorial that's in the way of the flow of traffic there. So putting that over on the other side, I think would be a great move for the city. It's my mother's brother is on that, died on Iwo Jima back in World War II, and his name along with other relatives are down there with their names. So I feel very important we keep it at Pennsylvania Park. It's the central, those people gave their lives for our community to allow us to have the freedom we have. So I don't see that going anywhere, and that's what I'm telling people is I think the veterans have spoken, and I know Shane and I feel the same, he feels the same, as we're just gonna leave it be. But I think we could straighten that out a little bit. I think we could do something with a Christmas tree, get a new Christmas tree in there. And anyway, what we're doing next is we're going to a closed session. And it's adoption of a proposed resolution that would authorize to adjourn to a closed session pursuant MCL 152268, section 8AD of the Michigan Open Meetings Act to consider the purchase or lease of real estate. I ask for a motion.
So moved.
A motion from Mr. Shields, second from
Support.
Ms. Demore.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Please give us roll.
Shields.
Yes.
Demore.
Aye.
Wagner.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Cash your battery in my own chair, and that'll just save people.
You can go.